things that I hate with every fiber of my being. This. Or more specifically, this. D-pads are an essential part of every controller. In 2D games, we use them to move our character. In 3D games, we use them to do a variety of things. Activate detective mode, select our weapon, and move the camera.
Well, okay, in Capcom's defense, they didn't really have a right stick.
Before the D-pad became popular, there were quite a few attempts and predecessors, such as the Intellivision, the NTEC Select the Game, and some arcades, as well as, well, a few other things as well, obviously. The list never ends. Eventually, though, we got our first D-pad, designed by Gunpei Yokoi in 1982 for the Donkey Kong handheld game. I won't say how good this D-pad is because, well, I've never used it and I didn't exist back then, but it did win an Emmy Award, so if I had to guess, it's a pretty good D-pad. They later used this for the NES and Famicom, where it grew to popularity, and it was so good that literally everyone copied it. Now that you've listened to my brief tangent on the history of D-pads, it's time for me to start tier listing D-pads, and our first victim is the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller.
This sucks!
This thing is mushy as all hell, it feels terrible to use, and that's not even the end of it. Look at this! You don't even know what button you're pressing. Hell, I'd even take the 3DS C-Stick over this and that thing sucks and deteriorates immediately. Easy F. The next D-pad is almost one of my favorites, the new 2DS XL D-pad. It feels great and it's almost my preferred way to play things like Shovel Knight Treasure Trove. Unlike the Switch Pro controller, it's clear at your press, it doesn't feel mushy, and it feels almost amazing. I say almost because there's just one big issue. They had to make space for the circle pad, which means that the D-pad is simply too low. I have to move my thumb all the way down to use it, and that makes my thumb hurt after like 10 minutes of playing. It also clicks a ton, which I like. Some others don't like it though. Some people complain about sharp corners, and although I've never had issues with it personally, if you do, just send it down by a fraction of a millimeter, no problems. B tier. Had the D-pad been higher up, I would have given it an S. Speaking of the DS lineage, the DS Lite. Yeah, let the exposure, yeah. This D-pad is also pretty nice. Directions are clear, it feels good. It doesn't click though, and it is a smidge mushier. Although it's not as good as the new 3DS XL D-pad, I did play the entirety of Super Mario 64 on the D-pad and only experienced minor pains, which is probably because I played for several hours straight. A tier. Next is the Xbox 360 D-pad, and it's also pretty bad. Sure, it feels okay, but it's a bit mushy, and more importantly, it's not precise. It's not responsive, and I end up having a hard time pressing the cardinal directions. If anything, I just press diagonals more of the time. Not as bad as the Switch Pro controller, but I'm gonna give it a D anyways, because it's a nasty stain on an otherwise amazing controller. Well, that and the lack of motion, but that's not their fault. The next stop is the PS4 D-pad, and it's decent. Directions are clear, D-pad's comfy, but it's very mushy. When playing 2D platformers, like Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, it always feels like I have to push down as hard as possible, which isn't even required. Had it been like the new 2DS XL's D-pad where it was more firm, I would prefer to use the D-pad in 2D games rather than the stick, but as it stands, it's just not good enough, and I still prefer to use sticks in 2D games. C. Next is what some might consider a lightning round, because I'm going to be assessing a variety of controllers that all belong to the same platform at the same time. The keyboard. Yes, this. When it comes to D-pads on keyboards, they're all pretty much the same, where it's 4 segmented keys that aren't all connected, and usually in a tetramino T form. And honestly, the way these keyboard D-pads are just depends on the feel of the keyboard itself. In summary though, D-pads on keyboards are just too separated and segmented for my liking. I can't slide my thumb around to use them. And even if they weren't segmented, how would I even slide my thumb to begin with? Because of this, I have to use several fingers for the D-pad, which means that swapping directions or diagonals, or making sure I don't hit left and right at the same time, which you can't do on pretty much every other D-pad, is very tricky. The best keyboard D-pads are ones where the keys are all very low, such as that of a laptop. But even then, sliding your thumb around is hard because it's kind of scary. It feels like I'm gonna break it. Now will I blame them? No! Keyboard D-pads are designed to navigate menus, not play games. If you really wanted a good D-pad to play your game with, then just plug in a controller. Our final victim is the Switch Joy-Con. This is one of the best D-pads of all time. It's everything good about the new 3DS XL D-pad, without any of the pains from being too low. It's clicky, it's comfy, but this D-pad is a little bit quirky because it's not as much a D-pad as it is 4 separate buttons. It's a bit like its forefathers in that sense. See the Atari Game Boy. Many call this idiotic, but you need to remember something. Joy-Cons are also meant to be used on their own. Like this. And when you flip it on its side, this D-pad becomes face buttons. If I'll be honest though, I actually like this quirk, because since every button is so distinct under my thumb, it's never a question of what's what. S tier. Alright folks, that's a wrap. Moral of the story, don't gamble away your controllers, because you can make a funny video about their D-pads. It has been Pac-O-Matic, and I'm leaving to go, talk to someone. Goodbye.